Hey guys, how's it going? And time for another Java programming tutorial. And in today's episode, we are learning about loops. Now, what is a loop? Well, we'll get into it, but first create a new project in IntelliJ or whatever you're using. And you can, we're just going to call it loops lesson. Now, there are a few things we need to go over. But before we do that, we need to, of course, wait for the project to load. And then need to create our package once this thing loads because it's being slow. Here we go, package io.pluto.loops. And then our main class, you can call it whatever you want. I just call it main for sake of stuff. And then psvm tab. And now we have our main method. Okay, so now we're ready to start with loops. So the first thing we need to do is go over the different types of loops. So there's while, there is do, it's do while, and then there is for. Now, the for loop has a few different types of for loops. So the first one we're going to go over is while. It's the simplest thing. It looks sort of like an if-then statement, except it says while instead of if. And in here, we put something that will return a Boolean. So like 1 equals 1. Now, IntelliJ is going to warn us because it's going to say that this will always return true, so we can say while true. And what this will do is a while true loop will repeat infinitely. Now there is while false. Now this is useless because, well, it's never going to run then. So what we're going to do is we are going to just add a simple thing. We're just going to say while true. And then inside here, we're going to do system.out.println hello. Now, if we run said program, and you just wait a second because it's building the program. Building, parsing Java, running, finished. Okay, now you notice it just repeatedly spams hello in the output box, which does get pretty annoying. We're going to turn that off because that's pretty useless. So what we're going to do is, so this is while. The next thing is do while. So in a while loop, it will always test this before running. So say you want this code that's in here, whatever it is, to run at least once. But then say this thing is like some sort of method that will return a Boolean. So let's just say Boolean hello. We'll just return true. We'll just do that for now. So say you had this hello, and it would sometimes static. And it would sometimes return true, sometimes return false. Well, say it returned false the first time, then this code wouldn't even run. So say you want it to run at least once, you would replace while with do, and then you put your code in there, and then while this, and then you add that, and then you would say hello. So this will run the code at least once, and then it will check. If it's true, it'll keep going. If it's false, it'll stop. So that's pretty simple. It will just run the code at least once. So then the last thing is a for loop. Now, there are two different types of for loops. The first one is a for iterator, where you start with an int, an integer, int I equals 0, say, it's most common type, but then you basically would do I is greater than, well, I is less than whatever the number of times you want it to repeat, so 25. And then I plus plus. So basically what this is doing is it's creating a new integer with starting with the starting variable of I. It only exists in this loop, and we're setting I to 0, and then it's gonna repeat this loop until it's gonna repeat this loop while I is less than 25, and at the end of each loop, each time it runs the code, it's gonna do I plus plus. So now you would put your code in here. There. Um, and then you would run the code, and it would it would run this. You'd get exactly 25 hellos printed out to the output box because it now this is starting at 0, and then if you print out like if you print out I, because you have access to this variable. So say you print out I, and you were to you see it only goes up to 24, but that's because it starts at 0. So if you're going to rely on this number here, you might want to add 1 to I when using it. So this is a for iterator, but there's another one. I suck. It's for each. It's called for each in reference to IntelliJ. That's what it calls it. And basically it has two things. So say you have like an array of strings. Yes, and then we'll do it with this value, and this value. So we have an array of strings, and now there is something you could do here where you could do strings dot length and then string s equals strings I, and that would be and you would have access to the certain string of that number. But this isn't the most simple way to do that because you can just delete this, do for, and then string s, and then colon strings. And this will go through each entry in this array and set it to this. So like the first time it runs the code, it'll be this entry, and s will equal WRG for whatever reason. And then the next time, it'll run the code again, but s will equal AEF. And then the last time it'll be ETG, and then it will stop running. So this is super useful for, well, doing something for each item in a loop without having to do the whole for iterator. Now, this is simple, but usually when I use a for iterator, or when I use for each, I end up replacing it with for iterator for this reason. So say I was doing then an array of objects, we'll call it objects, but we're not going to initialize it. No, yes, we are. We're going to initialize it strings, no, new object strings.length. So this is initializing an array of objects that has the same length as this one. So 3. So it has 3 open spaces. Then I would want to copy each item in here into this here, but I wouldn't do that using a for each. I would do it using the for iterator, and IntelliJ actually has an easy way of doing it. You can just type for I and hit enter, and then easily creates one. And then I would just do strings.length, and then what I would do is I would do string as, no, then what I would just do is I would do objects I equals strings I.
And well, you can actually do this. You can just do array copy, but so that's loops. But the next thing that has to do with loops that I want to teach you about is the different ways to exit a loop without reaching the end of the code inside of the loop. So let's go into that. So we are in here, and say we have a while loop, and we're just going to say while true, and then we're just going to put some code in here just as a filler, just so IntelliJ doesn't yell at me for having this thing be empty. What? Okay, whatever. So basically, that you actually, given what this has said, uh, okay, so given what this has said, it cannot complete this loop infinitely without throwing an exception because it's going on infinitely, and eventually Java's going to get mad at us. Um, so there are different ways to break out of a loop, and I will be teaching you break, return, and continue. So say you have like an if-then statement. Well, we're just going to quickly add something here. So what these two lines of code are doing is make a new random, and then we're just getting a random integer between 0 and 9. Actually, no, we're going to make it 1 and 10. Okay, so then we're going to say if x equals 10, x equals 10, then we are going to break. Now what the break does is it's not technically just loops, it's for any method. Oh, wait, no. What am I saying? No, this is not for any method. This is break is for any loop. And what break does is if break is called, it'll break out of the loop and continue the code after the loop. So system.out.println done. So basically what this is doing is it's going to print out this thing random all over and over, and each time it's going to get a random number between 1 and 10. If that number equals 10, then it's going to stop the loop and print out done. So we'll see how long it takes for it to get 10. So it actually didn't take that long. Maybe I would estimate around 20, maybe 25. That's just a rough estimate. I don't actually know. So that's break, but the next thing is continue. So now we're just gonna add some code right here. Hello. Um, and we're gonna add continue. So now what continue does is, oh, yeah, it's unreachable. Whatever. So what continue does is it basically breaks out of the loop, but it doesn't stop the loop. It just ends the loop right there and starts back at the beginning. So it's acting like this is the end of the loop's code, and it's so basically if x equals 10, then it's not going to end up printing out hello, and it's just going to go back here. But if it doesn't equal 10, then it's going to print out this and hello. So that's pretty simple. So you should see this as an example. It's gonna, oh God, it's gonna go infinitely. So sometimes, if you, yeah, so there are a few times where it equals 10, so it's not print. Okay, we're gonna stop that. Where it gets to 10, so it doesn't print out hello. Now the last thing is return. Now, this is the one that I was talking about that's for methods. It's also useful in loops, but it's mainly used for methods. So what return does is in a method, it basically stops the method right there. Now, you may notice a return here. It's returning true. That's because this is a Boolean. Now, this one doesn't have any like value by it because this is returning void. It's not made to return anything. So it's just going to stop the method right there. So if we were to copy, cut, whatever you want to call it, this code and put it in right here, this is going to give us an error because it's missing the return value. So we can just say return false. And this is unreachable. Ooh. I'm just going to say false. Okay, there we go. Now if x is equal to 1, then it's going to break out of the loop and return true. So what this will do is it will run through this code. If x is equal to 10, then it's going to stop this entire method and it's going to give it the return value of false. So if we were to say boot system dot out dot println hello. So what it's going to do is it will basically run through that code until it gets either, yeah, so here we got 10, so it returned false. Now, if we run this again, it might not give us false. Yeah, see, this time it got to 1, so it gave us true. And it repeated a few times beforehand. So, return basically ends the method, then if the method has a return type, then you're going to have to return a value of that type. So that's loops for you. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, like it. Then if you liked it even more, then subscribe. So have a good day, everybody. Bye.